Telegraph. Nick, what have they got?
Well, it's funny you should say that, Steve. They've got
Smooth link, come on.
Nice. I know you've definitely done radio. They've got Badenoch challenges Star on hate laws. So Kemi Badenoch, who was chosen instead of Robert Jenrick for some reason, but she's good on this stuff. She's very strong on the anti-woke stuff, and she's standing up. Of course, we've got the ongoing issue with Alison Pearson being, police coming to her house for absurd reasons, as we discussed last night. And Kemi Badenoch is just saying this should never happen. We have a problem with not taking free speech seriously. And that's absolutely true. Of course, we've had that problem throughout the Tories' time as well, before you say that, Steve. Yeah. But it's a general problem. And it goes far beyond just free speech. It's, as I said as I always say, it's anarcho-tyranny. The innocent are punished. Criminals are literally let out of jail to pop off champagne bottles. This is the country we have now. And so, yeah, that's that.
But why would you trust them, given that they had 14 years? Like, Suella literally tried to make them a bit better. Why not? If you believe that these non-crime, hate, blah, blah, blah things are pointless, don't just water it down. Wash the whole thing out.
Well, I mean, for a start, you had an ineffectual leader in Rishi Sunak, and Boris Johnson before wasn't, even though, his instincts were good, were very liberal, he wasn't the greatest details guy. So I think with what the Tories have realised is that, they were told that, if you're just a bunch of wishy-washy centrist socialists, then people will vote for you. And actually, people didn't vote for them. People want genuine conservatism. They want genuine classical liberalism. These are the values, free markets, the values that made Britain great. So it's disgusting to see us sort of slipping into this sort of communist idea of having laws around speech and around, thought crime that anybody can be perceived to have broken. I mean, the tweets that people are getting investigated for and getting locked up for, pretty much anybody could have sent these tweets. And so you've got a law that can just be, the powers that be can just pick and choose who that gets applied to. So we're all living in this, the vagueness, the opacity, and the confusion. It's that demoralises people.
People keep saying Kafkaesque, and it is like being in the trial. You don't sort of know your crime. Two people just show up, and suddenly you're in a kind of labyrinthine system.
But he goes on to be Norman Bates, so he was a wrong 'un. Sorry, just...
You're talking about the film, not the book. I'm talking about the book.
Yeah, I'm talking about...
That's where we're different.
Well, I've not read the book of The Psycho,
right.
but I know that
I'm talking about the trial.
Yeah, the film The Trial, it's Anthony Perkins plays it. So,
yeah, but also so did the guy from Twin Peaks later.
Wasn't as cool a reference as I thought I was going to land that one. I think, Steve, well done, 2 films. But no. The Express. Did Rachel Reeves lie on her CV? She will on future ones. It had nothing to do with me. I wasn't Chancellor.
So Rachel Reeves, who's our Chancellor, we don't know for how much longer, has been caught lying on her CV as GDP growth takes a big hit. Although, according to her, it hasn't, and it's doing really well. But yeah, in October, the Guido Fox website revealed that while she claimed she worked as an economist at the Bank of Scotland between 2006 and 2009, she in fact had a more mundane job working in a sort of admin department. So she wasn't an economist. And also, it wouldn't be great to be an economist at a British bank in 2006, like the year before the biggest financial crash in our history. But yeah, she was also caught quietly editing her LinkedIn CV to reveal her true role. And a Treasury source has now admitted she worked in retail banking, covering various areas, drawing on her background as an economist. So she's updated her LinkedIn to reflect that. She lied, is what they should have said. I've lied on my CV as well to get this job. I said I didn't have a Scottish accent, but I haven't lied. I wouldn't lie to become Chancellor. You're gonna get found out. It's ridiculous. And people usually lose their jobs when they lie. So why is she still Chancellor?
She's a politician, though. So
there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I know people who work at the Bank of England and other places like that, and their job titles are generally a bit more specific than economist. That is kind of like what a child would make up if they were like, bank economist. You know what I mean? It does sound dodgy. The question is, does it really matter? Apparently it is illegal under the Fraud Act of 2006, though that could be wrong because I read it on Twitter, so I've not checked it, but it sounds right, doesn't it? When someone mentions the actual specific act, you're like, that must be right.
It's a hate crime.
So that could be a serious problem. And, obviously you lied on yours, I never would lie on mine. Lewis lied on his before, he said he hadn't been to prison before he came to this job. But I'm more worried about all the communism still. Even though I think this is bad, and it'd be great if we could get rid of Labour using this. But in general, I'm worried about all the stuff she's explicitly doing, like the budget. Yeah,
and she's still the most financially experienced Labour politician. So, we should cut her some slack. Because she had apparently her parents gave her 3 little coins that she could put in a row when she was a toddler. So she knows more about money than the rest of them put together.
Did the parents take 2 of those coins back?
Yeah, and said this is socialism.
Yeah, because if she loses the job, it defaults to Diane Abbott, and that is...
Is that true?
No.
Oh, thank God.
It defaults to Angela Rayner. You can just keep listing Labour people. They're all funny to imagine as Chancellor.
RFK being in charge of health is bad for drugs companies, but good if you own a leech farm.
Yeah, it's GSK and AstraZeneca shares drop on Trump job for RFK Jr. So he got this job, didn't he? Secretary for Health and Human Services, I believe it was called. And as a result, GSK is down 3%, AstraZeneca down 2.4%, Croda is down 2.8%, because, of course, he's perceived as somewhat against vaccines, RFK, and people are thinking, well, what's he going to do? He's going to go afuera to the whole, medical industrial complex. And, I like RFK. He's been attacked a lot because he's a bit out there, but I personally think more politicians should have a falcon on their arm at all times. That's one of my beliefs.
Yeah. And also health secretaries should look healthy. He looks healthy. The last one didn't look healthy. And as for leeches, I mean, it's no less crazy than getting confused kids and saying, oh, you know what you need? You need your genitals cut off. I mean, that's the real craziness that, in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, we'll be looking back and being like, what on earth were you thinking, you medieval 2024 barbarians?
Yeah, that is a very good whataboutery point. That it is a different thing which is also wrong. Two things can be wrong at the same time.
Yeah, but one of them we're doing.
And also,
one of them we're doing.
Science has become so ossified. Peter Thiel made a great point on this. He said when science first came about, there was an attack on dogmatism and skepticism. But what's happened now is science has become so ossified. He said that it was, I've got a quote, he said it was more dogmatic than the Catholic Church in the 17th century.
Yeah.
And don't you see what he means? When we had COVID, we had the science.
Yeah.
And it became, so someone like RFK is a refreshing change from this dogmatism.
But the science is a political phrase that politicians used for their politics. Science is still different. I'm still a big fan of a principle of working out, you work out whether the thing you posit is falsifiable or not, and you try and prove it wrong. But there's your science.
But there's so much evidence that just doesn't happen in science or medicine
Not
anymore.
because of politics.
So get
them out.
No. Like there's a doctor who conducted a pretty big study on transgender children or children that have been, told they're transgender. So 95 kids were in the study. It was to see if puberty blockers helped them. The study found that puberty blockers didn't help them, so the study was quashed. It wasn't released. That's
not the science failing that. Who quashed it? Not a scientist. That's my point. More science is what we need.
But that is that. I mean, you can't say.
We're all saying the same thing.
You can't say that wasn't real communism. I mean, that's just how.
I'm defending science passionately here because science isn't the problem. Because the problem with the phrase "the science" is it includes science, and people think, oh, you can't trust it. It's science. No, you can't trust what's being done with the science by the politicians and people who've got.
Certain orthodoxies emerge in science, and it becomes hard for people to challenge them, and there's financial interest behind it, and so on.
But the pure science can challenge it, and that's what we think we are agreeing. But we need to get back to it. But stop insulting this. Don't drop the S word like that. Science is a good thing. Where to the Times, are dogs racist? They can't be. Some of them are already called Afghans.
Great point, Steve.
Thank you.
Dog-free zones will make the outdoors less racist, study told. So this comes from the Welsh government, who seem to do a lot of mad stuff lately. And they want to create an anti-racist nation by 2030. Oh, that would be nice. And it all just means that they'll hate white people, from as far as I can tell. And they want dog-free zones because they think that dogs kind of keep certain groups out of the countryside somehow because they don't want them around. The problem with all this is that we like dogs in this country, or England and Wales, especially in the countryside. You have a dog, that is normal. So if people come here, they have to adapt to that culture. Obviously, those urban dogs with like a muzzle or ones that look like they should have a muzzle, it's a slightly different thing. If you're in the countryside, you have a nice dog. That's part of our culture. We should have people who don't understand our culture-free zone that I'm proposing.
Without dogs in the countryside, you are basically whistling at sheep.
Great point.
Yeah. How else are you going to herd the things up without a dog?
I mean, I assumed when I read this was just going to be sheep farmers, just making a plea, subverting the DEI bureaucracy to try and get dogs away from their sheep. But no, it really is. It's more this sort of anti-white, elevating anybody who's come to the UK. Oh, instead of, asking somebody to accept British cultural values, let's impose their cultural values on British people. The Gypsy, Roma and Traveller community representative described dogs wandering freely in parks as bothersome and a source of fear. Must be terrible to, find something bothersome and a source of fear. But this is the sort of stuff, if native, indigenous British people said any of this about imported cultures, they'd be decried as racist. I'll be decried as racist just for saying that.
That's a normal day.
Yeah, I got to say, even if you don't say anything, it's just...
Yeah.
It's also a part of country life. You walk, because I'm from the country, you walk along, you've got your dog, they've got their dog, and you say hello. But without the two dogs there, it's just cottaging, isn't it?
There's got to be some middle ground between the two. I forgot my dog. Look what I've got to do now. Feels like you don't have to follow through on that idea. Right, Leo, to the Daily Mail. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has changed her pronouns, which is important because with a name like that, you are going to be using her pronouns a lot.
Yeah, so Riley Gaines, who's a swimmer, quite a conservative anti-trans swimmer, she's loads of fun, has ripped into AOC for insanity of virtue signalling as she spots that she's deleted pronouns from her Twitter account or X account and also her Instagram account. So AOC previously noted she had she, her pronouns on her profile, but that reference has since disappeared, and now we don't know what she is. She could be a man now.
She could be.
She could be. Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying that because I'm a bigot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She could be an Alsatian. We just don't know. And I mean, this is really the pronoun thing is quite interesting. It's sort of dying out now. I've noticed, the pronouns are disappearing from social media. Originally, it was ostensibly to sort of say solidarity with trans people because, and it's quite a patronising thing to do. They're sort of saying, oh, so your gender isn't obvious because you look like a big lumpy bloke, even though you're supposed to be a woman now. So I'm going to change my pronouns so you feel fine about putting your pronouns. Really, if you need to tell people your pronouns, you need to put more effort into your transition. Like, why am I having to do your transition in my head? It's not my transition. That's ridiculous. Put some effort in, put some lipstick on. Also, pronouns are really just a tribal signal. And also it's to force compliance with people. If you can make people comply to a ridiculous rule like showing your pronouns, they're more likely to comply to the next ridiculous rule.
Good point. And what's really interesting is 2 years ago, AOC had a video apologising that her pronouns had temporarily fallen off her Instagram. And so she's like, oh, I'll fix that. And then she immediately fixed it. 2 years later, she deletes them unilaterally from Twitter. And you go, oh, the culture's changed. You see, as Leo says, woke is ending. The time is here of MAGA. And actually what she's going to do, AOC put up an Instagram just recently saying, people who voted for me and Trump in sort of different ballots, tell me why you voted for it. Because that's the thing. People are voting Trump and AOC.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. So basically what she's going to do is she's going to change her pronouns to MAGA 2024. That's who she is now. She's on board with the MAGA train.
She thinks they're eating the pets. Yeah.
They're eating the
I think I've been
dogs.
red-pilled.
She's like, they were.
Say what you want about this phase. At least it taught people what pronouns are. If we could have another phase next that teaches people about prepositions, we'd all be a little bit better about using the English language.
What is a preposition?
It has to go before a word. Into...
Well, all words can go before a word.
No, it has to go before. You can't end a sentence on a preposition because it comes from the Greek meaning before this place.
So what is a rhetorical question? Sorry.
What is a preposition then?
To.
Yeah. Where are we going to?
With is the best one because of that sentence. It's something I won't put up with.
Where are we going with?
Yeah.
Who are we going with?
Can't say it.
I just did it.
Up with which
Leo
we will
didn't
not
have an
put.
education. So.
Yeah,
no, I had to say, we weren't taught any of this at my school either, until John Major came in with Back to Basics, which meant we've been given no education.
It was John Major who said this is something up with which we will not put, because you can't end it with at the end.
I could see you saying that.
And Tony Blair put a preposition at the end and got elected. There's your lesson.